Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Clear Politics Takeaway for Tuesday, May 4th, 2021. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RCP.
And I'm Carl Cannon, Washington Bureau Chief.
May the 4th be with you, Carl.
Star Wars Day, eh, Tom?
It is.
Yeah.
I saw a ranking of all the Star Wars movies, Carl, and they had The Empire Strikes Back at number 1, which I have no problem with. But they did have Rogue One, which I actually liked, which was the standalone sort of story before the sequel, the prequels, all of that stuff. Ranked number 8 behind a couple of other movies that I thought maybe were a little bit worse than that. What do you think?
Well, Tom, I remember when the first movie came out, the first Star Wars, the late 70s, and I saw it in Los Angeles, where people are. I was living in Southern California. My father was in Los Angeles, and people were very into the movie business in California. But this thing, I had never seen anything like it, and it sort of changed the way we think about movies. And the idea that you've got kids now, what was it? That's a long time ago. You've got kids now who weren't alive then, who go around, May the 4th be with you, greet each other, go to these conventions, dress up. I mean, it's been the most enduring franchise, and the moral of the story, May the Force be with you, that we're not alone in the universe, that there are forces more powerful than us. I don't care if you're a Christian, a Buddhist, a science fiction geek. There's something for everybody in those franchises. So I like them all.
All right, let's turn to politics, since that's what we do, Carl. And one of the things that is in the news, and Biden's going to talk about it, we've seen some polling on vaccine hesitancy and the idea that we may not get to herd immunity if we don't get more of the public to get vaccinated. I personally got my first shot. I'm Team Pfizer, so I'm on board. I know you've already gotten vaccinated, but how does the government? What role does the government play? How can Biden go about? We've seen movie stars and the like having these like telethon type things, trying to get people to vaccinate. What else can be done, or is it just kind of we're going to end up where we end up?
Well, Frank Luntz did some focus groups on this, and he found that when politicians tell people to do something, they kind of don't want to do it, even if they're going to do it before. So, there's limit. The bully pulpit's limited. It probably always was. My friend George Edwards, a political scientist from Texas A&M, wrote about this idea of the bully pulpit and presidents moving the needle. It's hard to do. It's hard for a politician to give a speech and have people change their behavior. Joe Biden's going to try later today in the White House. The governor of West Virginia is paying young people to get them. You were telling me about these beer and shots some bars are doing.
The governor of New Jersey, Governor Murphy, rolled out yesterday the shot and a beer campaign. So if you get vaccinated and you take your vaccination card, proof that you've been vaccinated, to any number of bars in New Jersey, you can get a free beer, which I thought was actually, I tweeted that to one of my friends. He said it's the smartest thing Murphy's done since he's been in office. So,
well, I actually think it's going to take some of these. It sounds gimmicky, but it's going to take non-politicians getting involved too. Bars and ballparks, airlines. I don't know. There's a role for the private sector, and there's a role for nonprofits, and there's just a role for ordinary Americans to play. There's these cases in some rural town I saw in Virginia where a sheriff just goes to an elderly person's house, and she was afraid to, an elderly woman, she wanted the shot. She was afraid to go out to get it. She said, "Oh, thank you for coming." So it was perceived that she was reluctant. She wasn't. I think we have to be imaginative about this. The anti-vaxxers range from, far left progressives one of them's a famous Kennedy, to, never Trumpers who are mad at Biden for winning the election. There's, in the African-American community early on, there was resistance, less so now. Latino community, same thing. So, some evangelical Christians don't want to do it. There's little pockets of resistance, but we need everybody to do it. You're not just doing it for yourself. And I think the key is, a combination of self-interest, a beer and a chaser, a shot and a chaser. Good. That's funny and it's harmless. But also, we need to explain to people, even if you don't think that you're vulnerable, you're a 25-year-old person in perfect health, you have no underlying conditions, you're doing it for other people. You're doing it for the greater good. I have a friend of mine who said, if this generation had been alive in 1941, I'm not sure we would have prevailed against against the worldwide fascism. Because World War II, the greatest generation, what they really did was they sacrificed. And we need a little of that. We need a spirit where we really are all in this together. And unfortunately, the politics, which you and I covered, Tom, the spirit of politics right now is the other side's bad, I'm good. And that doesn't get you where you need to be. That doesn't get you to herd immunity because people don't see themselves as a herd.
Right. Well, this idea that it's in the greater public good was out there yesterday. I don't know if you saw this, Carl, but Governor Andrew Cuomo was urging people to get vaccinated and said basically, if you're a young person, you should do it because otherwise you might kill grandma, which people were like, I cannot believe that this guy said that. He's obviously involved in a nursing home scandal where his administration covered up.
Wait a minute, Tom. Wait a minute. Let's think imaginatively, though. Andrew Cuomo could say, all right, if 500,000 more New Yorkers get vaccinated, I threw that number out, or 1 million, whatever it would take, I'll resign. Now, see, there's an imaginative approach, and he would be sacrificing himself for the greater good.
That would actually be, I bet you that would work. I bet you could find a million New Yorkers who would run to get a shot in the arm to get rid of him.
Well, I'd admire him more if he did it. So it's a win-win.
All right, last subject real quick. We've run story after story after story from, Robert Reich in The Guardian to Harry Reid in the Las Vegas Sun, a whole host of stories over the past week or so in the aftermath of Biden's speech to Congress, saying, Biden's going big and bold, and that is good politics and good policy for the Democrats. They are going to reap the benefits of this. However, we had what some would say, and it's arguable whether this was a test case or not, take place a special election in Texas's 6th congressional district. There were, 24 or something candidates, including, this is Rep. Wright's district. He passed away. His widow, Susan Wright, ran down there along with a bunch of other folks, including a Never Trump candidate and a few Democrats. She won 24% of the vote in a very divided field. And the Democrats were shut out. And this is a district that Trump won by a few points. The Democrats lost this district by more than 20 points, Carl. And some folks are saying they are now shut out of the runoff. The top two finishers were Republican. That this is a bad omen for the Democrats. And maybe, in fact, what's going on is not good politics for the Democrats. And others are saying, look, this is just one election. It's early, and we always make the mistake of trying to read too much into special elections. What do you think?
I'm in the latter camp, Tom. You had several Democrats came out of nowhere to split the Democratic vote. Look, it's an inside straight. That district may be becoming a swing district. It's not quite yet. It may be an inside straight for the Democrats, but they didn't draw to it. They had, progressives people never heard of who raised a lot of money and split the Democratic vote. Their only chance was to nominate a well-known Democrat, get into the runoff, and maybe eke out a close election. I wouldn't read too much into it. But to your larger point about the Democrats, Tom, they're kind of going, they're making two arguments at the same time that are not really, don't really cohese. They're saying this big and bold stuff is popular. It polls well. It's what the country needs. It's what the country wants. That's not wrong. It does poll well. Real Clear Opinion Research, we did a poll. So far, what Biden's proposing does poll well. And if you ask people the specifics, it polls even better. On the other hand, you're having these defections of Democrats from Congress who aren't running. You have this very narrow majority. And progressives are saying we have to go big and bold now because we're not even going to have the House in 2 years. So I'm not sure which of those narratives is right. I know that they kind of argue against one another. But but we'll find out. Off-year elections are difficult, typically, for a president and his party. That's what history tells us. If that's true, a year and a half from now, the Democrats will be glad they pushed all this stuff now.
All right, we will leave it there. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of Real Clear Politics.
And I'm Carl Cannon, Washington Bureau Chief. On Tuesday and Thursday, Tom and I do a podcast. On Friday, we do a longer version, audio only. So, join us again Thursday and on Friday.